Picture this, 1979. A song erupts from radios across America like a lightning bolt of pure joy. Black families, white families, everyone dancing in their living rooms, fists pumping to that unforgettable opening line. Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now becomes the anthem of a generation, the soundtrack to Philadelphia sports teams, the heartbeat of hope itself. Two men created that magic, McFadden and John Whitehead. Yet when people talk about the sound of Philadelphia, when they celebrate Gamble and Huff's empire, these names barely register as whispers. How does that happen? How do the architects of joy become ghosts in their own story? If you love uncovering hidden legends like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legends Underrated. This is the story of two boys who survived death multiple times, wrote 22 gold records, changed music forever, and paid an unimaginable price for it all. McFadden arrived in this world on January 28, 1949, in the small town of Olathe, South Carolina, before his family relocated to Philadelphia. John Whitehead came screaming into existence just months earlier, July 10, 1948, in the heart of North Philly. His mother nicknamed him Toodles, sometimes just Two for short. She used to wake him in the middle of the night as a toddler just to watch him dance. Even then she knew. Even then she saw the spark. By the time John hit elementary school, teachers were pulling his family aside, telling them this kid was different. When he imitated Elvis Presley in the schoolyard, children gathered around him like he was broadcasting from another dimension. The principal said it plainly. Born leader, John and Jean met as teenagers at Edison High School in North Philadelphia, sometime around 1964. They clicked instantly, not just as friends, but as creative soulmates who understood rhythm the way most people understand breathing. They formed a singing group called the Epsilons, with John's cousin and a few neighborhood kids. They had the harmonies, they had the hunger, and most importantly, they had the sound. A sound that caught the attention of a DJ named Georgie Woods, whose wife Gilda became their manager and gave them their name. Then came 1966, the year everything changed, the year death first reached for them and somehow missed. The Epsilons were performing at a show when Georgie Woods introduced them to a man who would become a legend, Otis Redding. The King of Soul himself heard something in these Philadelphia kids, especially in Gene's voice, that raw, aching quality that reminded him of his younger self. Otis signed them to Stax Records on the spot. Suddenly, the Epsilons were touring the world with one of the biggest stars in music. They were living the dream, riding that impossible wave of youth and talent and perfect timing. But 1967 taught them a brutal lesson about mortality. During a tour, the Epsilons were scheduled to appear on American Bandstand. When they discovered they wouldn't actually perform, they canceled their flight. That plane, the one they were supposed to be on, crashed. Over 200 people died. They walked away without a scratch, haunted by the ghost of what almost was. Then December 10th, 1967 arrived like a hammer to the chest. Otis Redding's plane plunged into the frozen waters of Lake Monona in Madison, Wisconsin. 7 men died, including Otis and 4 members of his band, the Barkays. Only Ben Cauley survived to tell the nightmare. The Epsilons were supposed to be on that flight too. They left California early for Christmas. Death had circled them twice in 1 year and missed both times. After Otis died, the Epsilons released a single called The Echo on Stax Records. It barely made a ripple. The magic felt broken, cursed somehow. They returned to Philadelphia, regrouped, renamed themselves Talk of the Town, and signed with North Bay Records. Nothing stuck, nothing worked. Finally, they caught the attention of Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, two visionaries building an empire called Philadelphia International Records. Gamble and Huff saw potential in McFadden and Whitehead, but not as singers. They wanted them as songwriters. John took a job in the mailroom at Philadelphia International just to get close to the music. It was humble work, but he didn't care. He was inside the machine now, watching how hits got made, learning the language of success. And then one day in the early 70s, John was going through something heavy, family drama, betrayals from people he thought were friends, the kind of pain that sits on your chest and won't let you breathe. He sat down and the words just poured out. What they do, they smile in your face. All the time they want to take your place. The Backstabbers. He and Gene shaped it into a complete song and brought it to Gamble and Huff. The Gene label heads heard gold. They gave it to a new group they just signed called the OJs. Eddie Levert hated it at first. He wanted to sing ballads, not this aggressive funk track. Gamble and Huff forced the issue. Backstabbers exploded. #1 on the R&B charts. #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Philadelphia International's first gold record. McFadden and Whitehead became the secret weapons. Stories like these are why I built Legends Underrated. Make sure you're subscribed for more untold tales. Over the next few years, they wrote hit after hit after hit for the OJs, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the Intruders, Lou Rawls, Teddy Pendergrass. They wrote I'll Always Love My Mama and Bad Luck and the iconic Wake Up Everybody, a song John later said felt like God was speaking directly through him, telegraphing a message the world needed to hear. They wrote for James Brown. They wrote for Gladys Knight. They wrote for the Jacksons, 22 gold records, 2 platinum albums. They were making Gamble and Huff very, very wealthy. But here's the cruel part. Nobody told them about publishing. Publishing is where the real money lives, the long-term wealth that keeps paying decades after the song drops. Gamble and Huff were getting songwriting credits, meaning they controlled the publishing, the rights, the fortune. McFadden and Whitehead were getting pennies on the dollar. They didn't know any better. Nobody explained the game. Then they started meeting other songwriters and musicians who were making fortunes from publishing. That's when the anger arrived. That's when they realized they'd been played. They started lashing out, screaming in the hallways of Philadelphia International, demanding what was owed to them. Gamble and Huff had a problem on their hands, so they made an offer. Fine, go ahead, record your own album. Just shut up about the money. Freedom at last. Or was it revenge? Gene and John walked into the studio in 1979 with something to prove. They created Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now in one take. One take, they made up the lyrics as they went, pulling from all that frustration, all that years of being held down, being told no, being invisible. The female group, the Sweethearts, added background vocals that lifted the whole thing into the stratosphere. John's voice soared with a kind of spiritual defiance. When they brought the finished song to Gamble and Huff, the label heads thought maybe it should go to the OJs instead. But it was too late. This was McFadden and Whitehead's moment. April 1979. The single dropped and detonated like a cultural bomb. #1 on the R&B chart. #13 on the Billboard Hot 100. number 5 in the UK, number 10 on the disco charts. Double platinum, 2 million copies sold. People called it the new black national anthem, replacing Lift Every Voice and Sing from the 1900s. The Philadelphia Phillies used it as their theme song. The Eagles blasted it in the locker room. Boxer Larry Holmes walked out to it. Disco clubs couldn't stop playing it. The song was everywhere, unavoidable, eternal. It earned a Grammy nomination for Best R&B Vocal, performance by a duo, group, or chorus, up against Peaches and Herb's Reunited, Dionne Warwick's Deja Vu, Sister Sledge's We Are Family, and Earth, Wind and Fire's After the Love Has Gone. They lost to Earth, Wind and Fire, but they'd already won something bigger. They'd proven they belonged in front of the mic, not just behind it. Then May 25th, 1979, they were in Chicago doing promotion, riding high on their success. They were scheduled to fly to Los Angeles, but someone suggested one more interview, just one more. They rescheduled their flight for the next day. The flight they were originally booked on American Airlines Flight 191 crashed just after takeoff. The engine detached from the wing. The plane rolled over and plunged into the ground. All 258 passengers died. 2 more people on the ground perished in the fireball. It remains the deadliest aviation disaster in U.S. history. Death had come for McFadden and Whitehead again. And again, they'd somehow slipped through its fingers. How do you process that? How do you keep living normally when fate keeps aiming at you and missing? They tried. They released more singles. I've Been Pushed Aside. I Heard It in a Love Song. But nothing matched the lightning in a bottle magic of Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now. In 1982, they left Philadelphia International and signed with Capitol Records. They worked with Melba Moore, Gloria Gaynor, Freddie Jackson. They released an album called Moving On with the single One More Time. It barely dented the charts. The momentum was gone. They decided to take a break, spend time with family, breathe for a minute. That's when John's world collapsed. In 1984, the IRS came knocking. He hadn't filed taxes from 1975 to 1980. The government hit him with charges of tax evasion. He filed for bankruptcy. Then they sent him to prison for 2 years. 2 years of his life locked away while his music still played on radios and at parties, while his sons Kenny and Johnny, who'd formed their own R&B duo called the Whitehead Brothers, were getting a record deal through Philadelphia International. While Gene kept performing without him, in prison, John converted to Islam. He studied, prayed, found some kind of center in the chaos. When he got out around 1988, he tried a solo album titled I Need Money Bad on Polygram Records. The title said everything about where his head was at. Over the years, McFadden and Whitehead reunited for oldies tours, playing basketball games and big events. The song never died. People still lost their minds when Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now came on. But in July 2000, while John was on vacation, thieves broke into his house. They held his brother at gunpoint. They stole $60,000 in jewelry, his Rolex, his safe, all his suits. Then in 2002, the IRS came back like a recurring nightmare. They slapped a $5.4 million tax lien on him, $1 million in back taxes, the rest in interest and penalties spanning decades. John fought it, claiming he'd never received proper notice and only owed $17,000. The legal battle consumed him. He started writing a book about his life, planning a movie about his career, trying to control his own narrative for once. May 11th, 2004, late afternoon, John was outside his Philadelphia home with a friend, a young mechanic named Ahmed Johnson, someone John was mentoring. They were working on John's SUV. Suddenly, gunshots shattered the air. John crumpled to the ground, blood pouring from his neck. His wife, Eleanor, a licensed nurse, ran outside and tried to save him. She spoke to him, begged him to open his eyes. He never did. He had no pulse. John Whitehead was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 55 years old. Ahmed Johnson was shot twice in the buttocks, but survived. Police believe John wasn't the target that the shooters were after Ahmed because of an earlier argument. They walked right up and opened fire, knowing Ahmed would be there. Wrong place, wrong time. John Whitehead's murder remains unsolved to this day. Gene McFadden went to the crime scene. Witnesses said he was trembling, completely shaken. He'd lost his creative soulmate, his brother, the other half of his voice. Gene was already battling liver and lung cancer. But after John died, his health accelerated into free fall. On January 27, 2006, one day before his 57th birthday, Gene McFadden lost his fight with cancer. Death finally caught them both. Today, Ain't No Stoppin Us Now still erupts at weddings, graduations, sports arenas. People still dance like crazy every time those opening notes hit. In 2017, McFadden and Whitehead were inducted into the Philadelphia Music Walk of Fame, alongside Sister Sledge, Patti LaBelle, Jill Scott, and other legends. There's a book called A House on Fire, The Rise and Fall of Philadelphia Soul by John A. Jackson that tells part of their story. But their family still holds so much untold history. That book John was writing, that movie he was planning, those stories deserve to see light. These men wrote the soundtrack to resilience. They survived death repeatedly. They created magic while being exploited. They fought for recognition and finally grabbed it. And then tragedy claimed them anyway. But here's the truth. You can kill the messenger, but you can't kill the message. Every time someone plays Ain't No Stoppin Us Now, Gene McFadden and John Whitehead live again, their voices echo through time, reminding us that no matter what tries to hold you down, injustice, invisibility, violence, death itself, the music survives, the legacy survives. Nothing can stop that now. If stories like this move you, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legends Underrated, because these legends deserve to be remembered.